It was supposed to be a celebration mine. I had imagined something soft and quiet, filled with laughter, that didn't have to compete with television volume and scents of vanilla cupcakes and lavender, instead of fried food and engine grease from my stepdad's garage. I was 8 months pregnant and hosting my own baby shower in the home I paid for in Denton, Texas. I didn't ask for much, just a warm gathering of people who cared. I handled the invitations, the catering, even cleaned out the guest bathroom myself, scrubbing the tile grout, while trying not to strain my lower back. I strung pastel streamers across the windows, arranged faux daisies in glass jars, and laid out an acoustic playlist I made on my phone the night before, imagining someday my daughter might fall asleep to those same songs. The kitchen table was lined with pink frosted mini cupcakes, a fruit platter shaped like a teddy bear, and an iced lemon cake I ordered from a local bakery. I picked the flavor because it reminded me of summer afternoons on my grandma's porch. Everything was mine, from the color palette to the paper napkins printed with the words, "Welcome Baby Ray." A few of my cousins arrived early, carrying carefully wrapped gifts and offering hugs that didn't feel forced. My Aunt Deborah handed me a children's book collection she said used to be hers. My friend Kara brought a hand-knit baby blanket in soft sage green. I thought for a brief blissful moment that it was all going to be okay. Then my mom clinked her wine glass with a salad fork. That sound, tiny and sharp, cut the air. She stood with her usual hostess smile, the one she wore at HOA potlucks or school recitals. My stepfather Dan had his hand lightly resting on her shoulder. Beside them was Ethan, my younger brother, shifting from foot to foot, cheeks pink with anticipation. "Before we cut the cake," my mom said, her tone honey thick, "we have a little surprise announcement." I knew that voice. It wasn't mine anymore. This wasn't my moment. Ethan stepped forward, holding a crisp envelope, like it was the launch key to some grand destiny. "I got accepted," he said, grinning wide. "Full ride to Duke's." There was a beat of stunned silence, then applause. People stood. My aunt gasped and clutched her chest like she had been waiting her whole life to hear that sentence. Someone whooped. My neighbor clapped so hard her bracelet flew off. In the corner, someone shouted, "That's incredible!" And just like that, the center of gravity shifted. Chairs angled toward Ethan, smiles refocused. The baby name banner hanging behind the snack table suddenly looked misplaced, like a typo on a party invitation. I watched as hands that were just moments ago brushing my arm, placing gifts beside my chair, now reached for Ethan. I remained where I stood, the pink sash across my chest, Mom, to be a relic of a ceremony that was no longer happening. My lemon cake sat untouched. Within minutes, the atmosphere had completely changed. My aunt switched her seat to sit beside Ethan. The snack table, once neatly arranged with baby-themed treats, now became a buffet line for congratulatory plates. My cousin moved the gift bags to the sideboard to make more room. Someone asked if we could put on music, something more upbeat. I was still holding a glass of ginger lemonade that someone had handed me earlier, still wearing the sash my friend Kara had bought that read "Expecting Joy," but no one was looking at me anymore. Then came the sound of sneakers pounding across the hardwood floor. Ethan's friends had arrived. All of them, dozens of backpack-wearing, hoodie-draped high school seniors bursting in like it was prom night. One of them yelled, "Where's the celebration at?" while another had already connected his phone to a portable speaker. Bass dropped before I could even say hello. My lullaby playlist. The one I had spent 2 hours curating the night before was instantly drowned out by a hip-hop track so loud the windows trembled. I stood there frozen, blinking slowly, trying to process what was happening. My mom walked past me and said almost cheerfully, "We'll cut the cake later once things settle." Except they never did. The cake, a delicate two-tier lemon raspberry with white fondant, was moved off the main table. Someone placed a bottle of Dr. Pepper next to it, which promptly tipped over and sprayed soda down the side. I reached for a stack of napkins and started blotting. Frosting had smeared onto the edge of the table. I crouched 8 months pregnant and began scrubbing the floor with one hand while trying to stabilize myself with the other. As I knelt there wiping buttercream from my tiles, a group of Ethan's friends stepped over me laughing and hollering, not even pausing to say excuse me. I stayed there for a moment longer than I should have, hands sticky with icing, knees aching, breathing slow through my nose while their voices echoed over my head. I could hear Ethan in the next room talking about orientation dates and dorm options. My mother chimed in, boasting about how they'd hired a private college advisor to unlock his potential. The same mother who once told me at 17 that college was a scam and I'd be better off working for the grocery chain down the road. So I did. I stocked shelves until my feet blistered, then came home to pack candle orders for the handmade shop I ran out of my garage. I taught myself taxes, marketing, inventory. I grew that business with no help, no investors, just long nights and bruised fingertips from twine and hot glue. I had figured out adulthood on my own. And when it finally started paying off, I didn't tell them. I saved every penny. I bought this very house, without a cosigner, without a dime from them. When the paperwork went through, I invited my parents and Ethan over, handed them the keys, and my mother cried. Not because she was proud, because she assumed she was moving in. They did. 1 week later, no offer to contribute, no discussion of rent. They brought their things like it was a foregone conclusion. My dad even joked, "Well, you've got the big girl house now, guess we'll make it a family home." I had told myself it was temporary, that maybe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me, not as background noise, but as someone real. I was wrong. As I sat back on my heels and looked around the room, my garlands were torn. My Welcome Baby Ray banner had been pinned behind a hand-drawn poster that read Ethan Eel's Blue Devil in bubble letters. I stood slowly. The napkin was still clutched in my hand. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. Instead, I walked into the kitchen. I washed my hands, dried them on a dish towel. Then I quietly slipped down the hallway and into my bedroom. I closed the door. The music pounded in the background like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. I sat on the edge of the bed, back aching, feet swollen, but my thoughts sharper than ever. I opened a folder on my phone I had started weeks ago, labeled simply Contingency. I didn't plan to argue, but I wasn't going to forget either. I used to believe it had all been equal. That Ethan and I were just two kids growing up under the same noisy roof, dodging the same leaks, trying to share the same umbrella when the storm rolled in. But the more I looked back, the more I saw it clearly. The umbrella had always tilted in his direction. I was 6 when he tossed my favorite doll into the backyard fire pit. I screamed, sobbed, tried to rescue the singed plastic limbs before the flames took them. My mom came out, looked at the smoking wreckage and said, "Well, you shouldn't have left it where he could get it." When I protested, she sent me to my room for being dramatic. Ethan. He got an extra scoop of ice cream that night. I got nothing. In third grade, I won second place at the regional spelling bee. I came home holding the ribbon like it was solid gold. My dad looked up from the newspaper and said, "Only second guess." There's always next year. When Ethan got a participation trophy for soccer 2 years later, they threw him a pizza party and invited the whole block. I got an A- in algebra in 8th grade. My dad nodded and said, "At least you're trying." Ethan got a B in the same class a year later and suddenly had 2 tutors and a focus plan to unlock his brilliance. When I turned 15, I started cleaning houses on weekends to save money. Ethan got an allowance just for taking out the trash once a week. They told me I was more mature, so it made sense I should help more around the house. I did dishes, I vacuumed, I mowed the lawn. Ethan played video games and occasionally carried in groceries if someone reminded him. They said I should be patient, that I was the responsible one, that girls mature faster, and I should understand that. So I did. I kept quiet. I became the helper, the reliable one, the one who didn't make waves. I got used to being the supporting character in a show that wasn't mine. By 16, I stopped asking for rides, for help, for anything. I remember getting accepted into a local community college. I showed my mom the email. She looked at it and said, "College for what?" "So you can waste 4 years and come out in debt. Honestly, honey, just find a job and start saving." So I did. I applied to every store I could walk to, after school grocery chains, fast food warehouses. I got hired at a discount clothing store and worked the night shift on Black Friday, while Ethan, still in middle school, stayed home playing Xbox with his friends. By the time he turned 16, he had a brand new laptop, a prepaid tutoring package, and a personal college prep coach his parents took out a small loan to afford. They called it an investment. They never asked me if I needed anything. Once when I was 17, I got into a minor car accident on the way to work. Nothing major, just a fender scrape, but I was shaken. I called my mom from the shoulder of the road. She sighed and said, "You really need to pay more attention," and hung up. 2 years later, Ethan scratched his car in a Trader Joe's parking lot, and my dad left work early to meet him, patting his back and telling everyone at dinner how mature he had been for calling him. At 19, I launched my online shop. I resold closeout decor items, packed everything myself at night, shipping labels curling in the printer tray as I fell asleep beside them. I never told anyone about the returns, the angry customers, the shipping disasters that made me cry into my pillow. I didn't have time to be discouraged. I just kept going. Eventually it worked. I saved, I reinvested, I bought this house. When I handed my parents the keys, they acted like I had gifted them a favor. My mother cried. My dad said, "Well, now we've got a place where the whole family can stay together." They moved in without asking, never offered to help with bills, never asked what my plans were. They treated it like it was theirs from the start. And I let them. Because deep down I thought maybe, just maybe, if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. When I told them I was pregnant, I was bracing for disappointment, for concern. But what I got was something worse: blankness. "Oh," my mother said, blinking, "I guess that's happening." My father asked, "Is the dad still around?" I said no. They nodded. That was it. No hug, no smile, no warmth, just silence. They told Ethan that night over dinner. He laughed and said, "Guess we'll need to baby-proof the PlayStation." I laughed too, not because it was funny, but because it was easier than crying in front of them. That night, long after the music died down and the crowd finally spilled out onto the driveway, I stood in the kitchen alone. The counter was sticky from spilled punch. Crumbs littered the floor. The dish towels were soaked, the garbage was overflowing, and someone had left a red Solo cup floating in the bathroom sink. It was quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that comes right before a fire alarm, a silence that hovers too long. I poured myself a cup of chamomile tea, not because I wanted it, but because it was a ritual I could still control. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten soft gray over the rooftops of sleepy Denton. Inside, I placed a small stack of envelopes at the center of the kitchen table. Each one was sealed, labeled with a name in bold black marker. Dan, Marie, Ethan. I sat down slowly, my lower back pulsing with dull pain, one hand resting over my belly, as the baby rolled gently, as if she too could feel something shifting. I had been planning this for weeks, quietly, carefully. I wasn't angry when I started. I wasn't even resentful. Just clear. The first time I Googled how to file an eviction was the day after I found out my parents had spent $500 on Ethan's SAT retake fees, after asking me if I could hold off on buying a crib for a few weeks just in case finances got tight. That was 2 months ago. Since then, I had spoken to a housing attorney, paid out of pocket for notary services, filed paperwork, tracked certified mail, scanned copies of the mortgage and every utility bill in my name. I hadn't told anyone, not even Kara. I knew if I told someone I might back down, I might be swayed, and I couldn't afford to waver. At exactly 7:04 a.m., I heard the shuffle of slippers in the hallway. My mother. She entered the kitchen, yawning, hair tied back, rubbing one eye with the heel of her hand. She stopped mid-step when she saw the table. Her eyes narrowed. "What's this?" she asked, her voice still thick with sleep. I didn't look up. I didn't need to. She picked up the top envelope and tore it open. I sipped my tea. Within 5 seconds, her entire posture changed. Her mouth opened, her brows pulled together. "Then what the hell is this?" Another pause, then a shriek. "Lillian, what is this supposed to mean?" The mug in my hand didn't tremble. I just took another sip. My dad stumbled into the room, robe tied crookedly, eyes barely open. "What's going on?" he mumbled. Ethan followed seconds later, hoodie half on, yawning. "She's evicting us," my mother shouted, waving the paper like it had spontaneously combusted. What? Ethan barked. I finally looked up. "I've given you 30 days' notice. It's all in writing." "You're kidding," Dan said, snatching one of the notices from her hand. "You can't be serious." "I am. You can't just throw your family out." Ethan said, voice cracking. "That's insane." "I'm not throwing you out," I replied. "I'm reclaiming my home." My mom's voice cracked. "After everything we've done for you, and now when you're about to have a baby." "No," I said softly. "I'm doing this because I'm about to have a baby." Ethan slammed his palm on the table. The notices scattered. "You're overreacting," he snapped. "It was just one party, one night. Why are you being so cold?" I stood up. "You took my baby shower and turned it into your college rager. You let strangers stomp through my house while I was on my knees scrubbing frosting off the floor. 8 months pregnant. That wasn't just one party." My mother moved toward me like she wanted to block my way. "This isn't just your house," she said, voice trembling. "We've lived here, built memories here." I nodded, rent-free, on my mortgage while I paid your bills, including Ethan's SAT tutor. Dan stepped forward, hands out, trying to mediate. Let's all calm down. We're family. You don't really want to do this. No, I said. What I don't want is to raise my daughter in a house where I'm a convenience, not a person. I'm done cleaning up everyone's mess physically and emotionally. My mom's face turned crimson. You think you're better than us now, huh? Just because you started that silly little candle store online? Just because you got lucky? I built this from nothing, I said, voice unwavering. And I invited you in hoping you'd treat it with respect. Instead, you treated it like a hostel, and me like staff. Ethan looked stunned. You've been planning this the whole time, haven't you? Yes, I said, meeting his eyes, I have. You're seriously kicking us out. Over one stupid moment, he asked. It wasn't one moment, I replied. It was every moment. That night just made it loud enough to hear. The kitchen buzzed with disbelief. Dan stared at the notice in his hand as if the paper might rewrite itself. My mom was pacing, hands flailing, muttering curses under her breath. Ethan looked like someone had just pulled the ground out from under him. You ungrateful brat, my mother spat. You think you're better than us because you made some money selling candles online. You think that makes you too good for your own family. I laughed, just once, quiet, hollow. No, I said. But I know what I've been to this family, and it wasn't a daughter. I was a convenience, a paycheck, a roof over your heads that you didn't even acknowledge came from me. Dan's face twisted. We sacrificed for you. You sacrificed me for Ethan, I replied, every single time. His jaw clenched. That's not true. When I wanted to go to community college, you said it was a waste. When Ethan wanted Duke, you remortgaged your car for his prep course. When I got a promotion, you barely blinked. When Ethan got an internship at a news station for 4 weeks, you invited the neighbors for a barbecue. Ethan tried to interrupt, but I kept going. I bought this house, I pay every bill, and still you called it ours, like you just inherited it. Ethan's voice cracked. You've been waiting to do this, planning this all along. I said. You're throwing your whole family out over one stupid party. It wasn't just the party, it was the last straw in a pile you've been stacking for years. My mom slumped into a chair, her dramatic sobs echoing through the kitchen. How could you do this to us? She cried. Where are we supposed to go? What will people think? I looked her in the eye. That's not my problem anymore. Her face hardened. We're not going anywhere, she snapped. You can't make us leave. This is still our home. I can, I said calmly, and I will. Dan scoffed. It's not even legal. You think you can just throw your own parents onto the street? I walked to the cabinet drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and laid it on the table. Inside were copies of the deed utility bills, the eviction notices, and certified mail receipts. I opened it like I was presenting evidence in court. It is legal, I said. I made sure. Ethan grabbed the folder and flung it across the room. Pages fluttered like leaves. You're heartless. No, I said, I'm finally protecting mine. Silence returned, this time heavier. My mother stared at the wall, frozen. Dan stood motionless. Ethan just breathed like someone trying not to scream. I looked around the wrecked decorations, the limp balloons, the crumpled banner that once read, Welcome Baby Ray, now buried under a pile of Solo cups. And for the first time, none of it felt like mine to clean. You have until the end of the month, I said, voice steady. If you need help packing, I've asked a friend to come by and assist. But on day 31, this house is mine again. You don't mean that, Dan said soft. You're just upset. I looked him straight in the eyes. No, I replied. I've never meant anything more. Then I walked down the hall, past the torn garlands, past the disarray, and back into my room. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. They didn't slam doors or yell. They didn't ask questions. They just floated. Like ghosts, Dan spent hours on the porch staring into his cold coffee. My mother folded laundry she never actually washed. Ethan barely left his room. But I knew better than to think it was over. Day 4, the messages began. Aunt Brenda texted, then Uncle Josh, then a friend from church I hadn't spoken to in 3 years left a voicemail. "We're really worried about you, sweetie. Your mom says you're overwhelmed. Hormones, you know. Everyone's just trying to help." Help! Right. My mother had launched a sympathy campaign. She was painting me as irrational, emotional, not herself since the pregnancy. I saw the forwarded screenshot from a cousin. She had called me unwell, but I wasn't breaking. Day 5, Dan cornered me in the kitchen. "We'll start contributing," he said. "Bills, groceries, rent. We should have done it sooner, you're right." His voice was soft, like he thought that would make it better. "You had years," I said. "You didn't forget. You chose not to." He nodded, then added, "But think about what this looks like to the rest of the family." There it was, the guilt card. I smiled politely, walked past him, and shut my door. By day 7, Ethan tried another tactic. We were at the dinner table, silent, awkward, when he cleared his throat. "I talked to Coach Jenkins," he began. "If I defer a year, I might lose my scholarship." He looked at me like I held the fate of his future in my hands. "I can't sleep. I can't even think straight. I need stability. You're wrecking everything." I nodded, tough. His jaw dropped. "You don't even care." I looked up from my plate. "Did you care when I was 8 months pregnant, wiping frosting off the kitchen tiles while your friends trashed the living room?" He slammed his fork down and stormed off. Day 10, my business partner called. "Hey Lily," she said, hesitant, "just a heads up. Someone emailed the brand account anonymously questioning if you're emotionally stable enough to manage operations once the baby comes." She paused. They didn't name themselves, but the language, it felt familiar. So I checked. And sure enough, the phrasing matched word-for-word messages my mom had sent to relatives. I didn't respond. I didn't yell. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. Day 12, the gloves came off. My mom cornered me in the hallway. Her eyes were puffy, her lips pursed. "I know you think you're strong now," she hissed. "But once that baby's here and you're up all night exhausted, overwhelmed, you'll come crawling back." I looked her dead in the eye. I already realized I don't need to. Day 16, a sheriff's deputy knocked on the door and handed my father a sealed letter. "Court filing confirmation." Dan read it, then punched the wall so hard a family photo fell. They hadn't thought I'd follow through. They thought it was a bluff. They were wrong. Day 21, my mother's guilt campaign reached full theatrical release. She wailed in the living room loud enough for the next block to hear, listing every sacrifice she'd supposedly made. "I let you live here rent-free," she sobbed. "I supported you through this pregnancy." Meanwhile, I sat in my room, noise-canceling headphones on, finalizing my baby registry. Day 25, Ethan invited his girlfriend over and said loudly within earshot, "She's insane. She's gonna mess up that baby's life." I walked into the kitchen. "You were at the baby shower, weren't you?" I asked his girlfriend. "You saw the underage drinking. You want to stick around because I have a list and I'm not afraid to file it." She left within 3 minutes. Day 28, the bags started to appear. Not much at first. A suitcase, a duffel bag, then boxes, reluctant steps toward departure. I didn't gloat, I didn't say a word. Day 30, the house was quiet again. The walls felt different, lighter, like they too had been holding their breath for years. Dan left without saying goodbye. My mom stood in the foyer, arms folded, mascara streaking. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "Family is forever." I met her eyes. Exactly. That's why I'm starting over with one that deserves to stay. Ethan was last. He stood in the doorway, backpack slung low. "You're lucky you know," he muttered. "Now that I'm gone, there's no one left to blame for your mess." I shrugged. Then maybe I'll finally get some peace. He rolled his eyes and left. The door shut behind him. And there it was, silence. But not the tense kind, not the one that came with judgment or passive aggression. This was peace. I walked through the house slowly. The rooms felt larger, brighter. I picked up the torn Welcome Baby Ray banner from the floor and folded it. Then I entered the nursery, smoothed the fitted sheet on the crib, and placed a pale pink blanket on top. Outside, the wind rustled gently through the trees. Inside, for the first time in years, I felt safe. Not because someone gave me that feeling, because I had taken it back. 4 years later, my daughter just started preschool last month. She wore a tiny purple backpack and told me she was going to teach everyone how to draw clouds. She's stubborn, hilarious, endlessly curious, and already smarter than I was at her age. The candle business didn't fold after her birth. In fact, it grew. I hired 2 employees. We hit 6 figures last year. I work fewer hours now. I take naps. I breathe. I laugh. I have room to exist. I haven't spoken to my family since the eviction. They never reached out. Neither did I. But people talk, especially at weddings and funerals. Word is, Ethan dropped out of Duke after his first year. Couldn't manage life without someone cleaning up after him. My parents tried living with an uncle in Oklahoma but got kicked out after 6 months, something about unpaid rent and unreasonable behavior. They're not doing great, and no, I don't feel good about that. But I don't feel guilty either. I gave them more than most would. I begged silently for the bare minimum. And when they refused to offer even that, I stopped offering everything. Do I think I did the right thing? Yes, absolutely, and I'd do it again. Because my daughter deserves a mother who knows what boundaries are. And I finally became her.